I'm a big ice cream guy, so
is that right?
always have been.
You would think low fat was not fattening.
They do.
Think again.
So,
Joe Hotchkiss, head of Cornell's Food Science Department, showed me what goes into a product like low-fat ice cream.
wow.
Turns out it has just as much sugar as regular ice cream. Their trick is to cut back on fat by using less cream.
All foods are really made of a combination of four major components: water, carbohydrate, protein, and fats. So you take out the fat in ice cream, you have to add something back. You can't just simply remove the fat. It's not as easy as that. Typically, we'll replace the fat with either one of the other three components, and most often that component is a carbohydrate.
Their recipe replaces the missing fat with carbohydrate in the form of milk powder and some seaweed extract to help bind it all together.
Boil and trouble, boil and bubble there.
Exactly.
But, no eye of the newt.
Have a taste. We'll have to send it to the blast freezer to get it frozen.
Okay.
But it can be tasted.
All right.
Still creamy.
That's low fat.
That's low fat.
Wow.
So in order
That
to really
does not taste like low fat,
No,
I gotta say.
it's a good formulation.
You fooled me. Here.
Yeah, I did
You
fool you.
fooled
Very
me.
good.
But while this ice cream does have less fat, says Hotchkiss, what he replaced it with has nearly as many calories. And in losing weight, calories are what really matter. So this isn't exactly diet food.
Locked in by freezing.
If you ask a group of people whether they would more likely gain weight taking in 3,000 calories in carbohydrates or 3,000 calories in fat, they almost all say, well, certainly you would gain more weight taking in 3,000 calories as fat, when in reality you probably would have an equal weight gain in both of those categories.
Hey, this yogurt is really something, huh? And it's non-fat. I've been waiting for something like this my whole life, and it's finally here.
TV sitcoms like Seinfeld satirized the public's belief that they could consume all the fat-free products they wanted.
Hey, another round of strawberry for me and my friends.
And guess what? People ate in excess. They didn't look at the portion size. They didn't look at the calories. They just ate them. And there's no free lunch.
And thus it happened that during the low-fat era of the 90s, Americans got fatter than ever. By 2001, 1/3 of our population was obese.
The low-fat message was interpreted as if you had a product that was low in fat, it was good for you, without thinking of calories. The best example is the Snackwell phenomenon. Snackwell cookies were advertised as no-fat cookies, but they had almost the same number of calories. And in fact, if you go to the store today and look at Oreo cookies, they have a reduced fat Oreo cookie that has, I think, only 6 calories less than the regular Oreo cookie.
So if low-fat food is not going to help me lose weight, what about a diet based on the USDA pyramid, which recommends eating lots of bread, rice, and pasta? That sounds reasonable. Bad idea, says Harvard nutritionist Walter Willett. Eating too much refined starch is a recipe for disaster.
White bread, white rice, potatoes are starches that are very rapidly converted to glucose, really pure sugar, and almost instantly absorbed into the bloodstream.
A sugar rush from a potato?
Actually, you get a bigger rise in blood sugar after eating potatoes, a baked potato, say, than you do from eating pure table sugar.
Really?
Really.
That seems pretty extreme. Why is that? Why does that happen?
When the blood sugar goes skyrocketing up, the body wants to bring it back down. So our pancreas pumps out a big blast of insulin. And as a result, the blood sugar comes crashing down rapidly. And that stimulates hunger.
So, eat refined starches, spike your blood sugar, get hungry, eat more, get fat. That's what happened in the low-fat era. The Atkins diet claimed to solve this problem. It said you could lose weight by skipping the bread and satisfying your appetite with protein and fat. A juicy steak, unlike refined carbs, burns slowly and keeps you full for longer.
Watching your carbs was never this easy. Introducing TGI Friday's new Atkins-approved menu. 9
That's why the Atkins craze is sweeping the nation.
spinach dip, sizzling strip with crumbled blue cheese.
When you look at the history of these Atkins-like diets, they all said the subjects didn't seem to be hungry. Study after study from like the 40s onward. We put them on the diet. If they eat less calories, they do it because they just don't seem to be hungry.
What is really important in the long run is how satisfying a food will be. And as it turns out that many high-fat foods, sometimes like meat, but even think of a handful of nuts, are often very satisfying, even though the physical amount is not very great.
Okay, there's the iced tea for you.
Great, thank you.
Would you like any breadsticks?
No.
No, doing okay?
No breadsticks. Okay.
I can see the appeal of this low-carb diet. I have to give up bread, but I get to eat all those forbidden foods I crave. Why should I even consider going low-fat? But I remember that conversation I'd had back in Florida.
You read the Atkins diet and they say, look, I could lose weight and I get to eat steak. Now, why would I not do that when Pritikin is saying no steak, low fat, seems a little hard to stick with?
Well, they eat the steak, but they can't eat the potato with the butter and the sour cream. They can't have the chocolate cake. They can't have the bread and butter. I mean, you're deprived on the Atkins diet, but you do get to eat the steak. The steak is better than the chocolate cake as far as your weight is concerned. But both cake and steak are loaded with saturated fat and cholesterol. And they're both going to clog up your arteries. So maybe you're thinner with a steak, but you're still, you know, what's the point of looking thin in a casket?
The accusations against the Atkins diet took a controversial turn last year when Dr. Atkins died after he slipped on an icy street. His medical records, which were leaked to the press by some of his critics, showed he suffered from heart disease, aggravated, they say, by his diet.
Veronica, how did you react when you first read that?
Well, I was totally outraged.
His wife defended him and the company's reputation, accusing his critics of their own bias.
So it was not due to poor eating and high cholesterol?
Of course. He didn't have high cholesterol. Of course it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. I mean, these are enemies of Bob's that are ultra vegetarians, and they just hate the idea that somebody eats meat.
But nothing, it seems, can stop the Atkins craze. What ad people now are calling the low-carb revolution. And back in his lab, Dr. Hotchkiss is taking the carbs out of food, just as he once removed fat. This is a low-carb snack, made almost entirely of whey protein. Take it from me, it tastes dreadful. All this leaves me with a culinary conundrum. If fats can clog up my arteries and refined carbs leave me hungry, what am I supposed to eat? There aren't many reliable studies out there. One of the few comes from Harvard. Back in the 70s, researchers began recording the lifetime diets of thousands of health professionals, noting what diseases they contracted. And after 20 years of research, here's the deal. Not all fats are bad. Saturated animal fats are linked to heart disease and cancer, but unsaturated vegetable and fish oils actually protect people. When the food industry removed these healthy fats from salad dressings, they made matters worse, not better.
The crusade against fat really led the food industry to produce all these fat-free salad dressing products. And the problem is that the fats that were in the salad dressings were the healthy fats, the ones you should be including in the diet. So people were giving up these healthy fats, and what we've seen is actually an increase in risk of heart disease among people avoiding full-fat salad dressings.
Okay, now in the great tradition of American reporting, I'll focus this all on myself. I love nuts. And everyone tells me, my wife harasses me. She's got great advice on most things, but she says, don't eat nuts, lay off nuts. You're my only hope.
Okay, well, let me help out, because nuts are really one of the neglected health foods on the American grocery store shelves. They've been given a bad rap by nutritionists because they are high in fat. Most of the calories in nuts are from fat, but it's almost all healthy fats. And what we've seen, interestingly, study after study, is that people who eat more nuts do not weigh more than people who don't eat nuts. And it's probably because even a small amount can be very satisfying.
The Harvard study found that not all carbs are bad either. Slowly digested, unrefined carbs like brown bread or brown rice are filling and nutritious. By now, most diet programs have gotten this good fats, good carbs message, and I was leaning in that direction myself. But first, I wanted to speak with the author of the most popular diet of the moment, the South Beach diet. Now there's a marketing brand with its promise of slender bodies on the sand.
In my college athlete days, I was about 165. Last 10 years, I think I went from 190 to 210. What would you say to someone like me?
Well, your story is really quite typical of American baby boomers. It's very predictable. And the more that you've had adult weight gain and the more it's been central weight gain, the more predictable it is that the South Beach diet will work for you.
Everybody thinks their diet is best, but Agatston is this year's winner. South Beach now outsells Atkins' Diet Revolution.
I give Dr. Atkins credit for teaching us that fat doesn't necessarily make us fat, and he was absolutely right. And there's been an evolution. The Zone diet was an advance, I think, over Atkins. I think Sugar Busters is an excellent book. But I think that the basic principles that good fats are good for you and the good carbohydrates are good for you and the processed ones are not, I think that's current consensus of opinion.
Here's the Atkins salmon for you.
Okay.
Would you like any breadsticks with that?
No breadsticks.
Okay.
All right.
So the truth is, all these diet programs are not as different as they claim. At Fridays, they call it an Atkins meal. But really, this salmon and broccoli would be fine on South Beach, Pritikin, or Ornish. And they all agree that if I eat like this, the pounds will start dropping off me. But even if I do lose weight, what are my chances of keeping it off?
Keep in mind that somewhere between 80 and 95% of people in your situation will regain it.
This is James Hill from the University of Colorado. He's a diet skeptic.
Something you can stick with.
Right. Can I do it?
Can you do it? The statistics would say no. The problem is we go on a, say, low-carb diet and it's great and we lose weight and we're doing fine, and then we start craving those carbohydrates. And what we do is not to transition over to a better diet. We sort of say, okay, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to give up. I'm going to go back to the way I ate before, and voila, the weight comes back.
I'm not sure I want to hear all this. If he's right, then all diets, from low-fat to low-carb, are really just gimmicks. They work at first by limiting variety. But over time, tofu and eggplant's not going to cut it. Not for me. Odds are I'll give in to temptation and gain back what I lost. And that's what had brought me to Weight Watchers. Here you can find people who have defied the experts and kept the weight off for a very long time.
Tell us what you lost. 102.
110.
135 pounds.
What is it about Weight Watchers that sets it aside and that worked for you, whereas other diets didn't?
It's a whole lifestyle change. It's not a diet. It's a commitment to eat right for the rest of your life, to watch portion sizes, watch what you eat, make sure that you exercise. So it's not just a diet that you go on, you lose the weight, and then you go slide back to your old eating habits, and pretty soon the weight comes back on and more.